So I've always experienced little creepy things throughout my life, but nothing huge. I moved from California to Western New York to live with my boyfriend, and we moved into our new place. It's a really nice area, so I would say that I lived without huge fear of anything really happening. We work nights, but I'm currently laid off due to COVID. My boyfriend still works though, 8 p.m. to 4 a.m., so I'm awake and alone during these hours with my dog and 2 cats. Now, it all started off as knocks on my back door, always coming from the back door too, that I would sometimes get scared of, but I just passed them off as the wind. But then one day, while I was playing PS4 online while in a party chat, I hear a lady sobbing outside. I tell my friends, and they tell me to not open the door, believing that it could be a human trafficking trick. So I crawl to the window and peek outside, only to find that there's nobody out there. So we joke that my backyard is haunted and all that, but I didn't really think much of it. I eventually even forgot about it. Now, this one stands out to me though, because I almost ran outside. I was on the phone with my family as my boyfriend was leaving to work. He usually lets the dog out before he leaves, and sometimes she doesn't come back in immediately. This is important too, because she has escaped from our yard as my boyfriend leaves, and we have to chase her down the block to catch her. So while I'm on the phone, I clearly hear my boyfriend yell the F-bomb. I immediately think, oh no, the dog has escaped. So I hang up the phone and rush to the door, but I realize that his car is gone. So I hang up the phone and I rush to the door, but I realize that his car is gone, so I just stand there confused and call him. Hey, what happened? Did Ruby get out? No, she's inside. Why did you think that? Well, I thought that I heard you yell outside. Oh, that's weird. No, I'm like a few blocks away right now. I was left extremely confused as I've never experienced that. I keep hearing things since then though, like knocks and bangs, even meowing once, but I ignore them all because I don't want to go outside. Whoever or whatever it was, it wants me outside I guess, and obviously I don't want to do that. So at around 3:30 a.m. today, my boyfriend got out early and got home. But as I was doing dishes, I didn't get to hug him with his welcome back hug yet. He went upstairs to get changed and I continued doing my thing, but I then hear him at the back door saying hello. For a moment, I'm thinking, he's outside the door and needs me to unlock it and open it? But I quickly realize that he's upstairs. So I just sort of freeze and immediately call him as I'm scared and confused. He tells me that he didn't say hello and that he's in the bathroom. I slowly walk away from the kitchen to the opposite side of the house, and at this point, I'm shaking pretty hard. I mean, it was definitely his voice and rhythm. Whatever it is, it mimicked his voice perfectly. Nothing else has happened as now the sun is out, but I do worry for tomorrow and every night after that. I guess, luckily, I'm not getting hurt by it or anything like that, but it's just a very scary experience. And it's honestly giving some anxiety now every time that I open that door, too. One of my friends has told me to get my house blessed, although nothing ever really happens in the house, it's only in my backyard. I was also told to put nickels on the windows, or something like that. I don't know if I'm going crazy and imagining all this. I wouldn't believe that it could be that though, because it doesn't happen when I'm thinking about it. It happens at random moments when I'm too busy doing something to be able to imagine it. I'm not on any medications, I don't drink or do any drugs. I have looked online for anything similar, but haven't found anything yet. What do you guys think? So for context, I'm a 22-year-old male and I live in a large city in the Midwest. Now, I drive for Lyft while putting myself through trade school. I drive for other similar companies, but that's beside the point. I have many other stories from them as well, but this is the one that I would like to share. So, it was Christmas Eve 2020. I was out running Lyft for a few hours before heading to my mum's with my new baby and wife. Nothing special going on for the night, really, just the usual pretty much. I get a ride request. It was a pickup from this kind of lower income apartment complex. No big deal. I arrive and I find my passenger. He has all of his belongings. Several boxes of stuff, in fact. My car is a 2006 Chevy Impala, so it's not too big. But we managed to get all of his stuff loaded up, just barely, and we're on our way. During the ride, he's crying, saying that his girlfriend was cheating on him and had walked in on them earlier that night. He couldn't stay there because it was her name on the lease, so I was taking him to a hotel, apparently. Now, in my city, we have a street that is well known for having vices, hookers, drugs, gangs, weapons, and just shady motels, the works. We get to the motel and he asks me to wait for him to check in and get his key. No problem, man, I say. I'll confess, though, that I break the rules a little when it comes to Lyft. But I do have a gun hidden in a concealed holster secured to the underside of my driver's seat for protection. Reason being, driving Lyft and other contract apps, I've had knives and guns pulled on me, as well as people have tried to fight me, rob me, and all kinds of other things, but like I said, another time. This motel was on that street that I mentioned before, though. Homeless people were everywhere. There was a dude on the far corner of the complex that still had a needle in his arm, passed out against the building, and I'm a big fan of true crime and all, and horror narration, so I'm definitely on edge. He gets his key, though, and the whole motel is ground level, so to help this guy out, I drive to his door. As I mentioned before, he had a lot of stuff too, so I started to help him unload his stuff. But while on my second trip getting all that, I saw a guy come out of the room just to the south of my car, followed by two ladies. They came up to the room that I was next to, not my passenger, but one of the ladies pounded on the door and then opened it. That's when I saw this guy raise a shotgun up out of his long coat and storm into the room. The two ladies followed him, slamming the door behind them, and in the following I heard a lot of yelling and shouting. I was just waiting for shots to ring out, when out of nowhere my passenger came up behind me. I can take this, man. Go ahead and take off. Have a Merry Christmas. And he gave me a cash tip. I didn't even notice that he took the boxes out of my hands or slid a $5 bill in my pocket because I was just completely frozen, to be honest. I knew that they may have been going down into that room, but I had to leave or at least get to where I could get my gun. I know the guy and both the ladies saw me, and I know that they knew that I saw the gun. I had to get out of there, though. You know, no witnesses and all that. So I got in my car and I just sped away quickly. I got a block or so away, I think, and then I sat down for a second and just called the cops. I gave them every detail that I could, and after I got off the phone with the police, I signed out of Lyft. I didn't have much money, but I was done. I got a call later that night. The cops apparently investigated. They never found the gunman or the women, and they never answered the door that I saw them come out of. And the occupants of the room they went into said that nothing had happened and that I was just making everything up. Well, I know what I saw. In February of 2012, I went to visit my grandfather's grave for his birthday. His death was really a hard thing for me to deal with, as he had died in March of 2011 and was still very fresh to me. I was kneeling in front of his grave with my head down, mourning and crying, when my body went into full dangerous close-by mode. I looked up to see a man running full sprint from the woods surrounding the cemetery, and forced myself to get into my truck as quickly as possible without the man getting close to me. By the time that I had made it to my truck, he had gotten about 50 feet from me. I jumped in and locked the door, much to his apparent displeasure. He threw his hands up in a huff like his favorite team had just lost a football game. I started the truck and started to drive out as fast as I could, but not before driving right past him. I didn't break eye contact for a second, and neither did he, so I got a really good look at this guy's face. Cut to a few years later, and I'm at work bored and decided to download an app that had a ton of paranormal, cryptid, serial killer, and UFO articles. And as I was browsing through the serial killers, I came across one that made my heart drop. Israel Keyes. It's a horrible story, and you can look him up for more information if you would like. But apparently he would bury things like kits in places long before he ever committed the crimes, in sort of a way to prepare for things. And I often think back to that day when he chased me through the graveyard like that, and I wonder if there was a kit buried in those woods. So about 3 years ago, my mum and I were living in a one-bedroom apartment. We didn't really have any money, and it was the only place that we could afford. It was a super old Victorian home in Tacoma, WA, that had been sectioned off into 4 different little apartments. Since I was a kid, I have always been super sensitive to, well, energies, I guess you would call them. Whether it's people or a place, if there's some type of a negativity, I can sort of sense it. When we first moved in there too, I immediately felt weird. I wouldn't say that I felt anything evil there, but the place just felt really off. Anyway, a couple of months in, I went to spend the night at my boyfriend's place, which wasn't something that I did often. About 9:30, I got a call from my mum. Mind you, at the time she was 63. I picked up and could immediately tell that she was really upset. She asked me if I was at my boyfriend's and if I was okay. I told her yes, that I'm perfectly fine, and she then explained to me that she'd gone to lay down to go to sleep when she heard my voice yell her name. At first I sort of doubted it and thought that maybe she'd had a bad dream, but she was so sure that she hadn't even been laying down more than a minute, still wide awake, and then it was like I was right in the doorway yelling "Mama." We both tried to forget about it, to be honest, but my mum was convinced that something was there in our apartment that was trying to scare her. A week later, she had gotten some Palo Santos to try cleansing the apartment. She again did this while I was out, but she called me scared, begging me to come home. When I got back, she explained that she had done the usual, starting from the front door, going through the living room to the bed and the bath, then the kitchen, working her way front to back. She said that she came to walk back into the living room where we had this little table and chairs, and her chair was pulled out from the table, tilted back, balancing on its back legs. I tried reassuring her that we would start looking for a new place, but it wasn't going to happen fast because of our money problems. And it was about maybe a month after that I was on the couch while she was cutting vegetables for dinner, and I heard her scream. I ran into the kitchen, and she said that she had placed the knife down on the cutting board, turned around to the sink to grab another vegetable, and when she turned back, the knife was gone. She said that she turned back to the sink and was checking the counters, but it wasn't there, so she opened up the drawer to get another knife, and when she turned back to the cutting board, it was there again. Well, we left the next day to stay with a friend for a while, but this was the most scared that I'd ever seen my mum, and I know it wasn't because she was losing it or just getting old. She was still very lucid. I still believe that if we had stayed there, that something bad would have happened to her, or maybe even to me. So before I get started, to make things a little bit easier, I suppose, I'm just going to label my cats in orders of alphabet, sort of. So, E, that's my old grey cat. T, that's the calico cat that ran away. And B, that's the white kitten with the black tail. Now, normally I probably wouldn't share something like this, but this is the fourth time something strange has happened, and it's left me more than a little creeped out and wanting to vent and maybe get an opinion or two on the matter as well. So my family, which is me, my sister and my mother, moved to a new house about 2 years ago, and the basement downstairs is unfinished, with the laundry room to one side split with a wall, and the rest of the basement is supposed to be a sort of play or gaming TV watching area for my sister and I. The basement has always been a creepy area, but it's a basement, right? No one likes basements, so I never really thought much of it. Until, well, now. So the first event, it was probably like 5 or 6 months since we had moved into the house, and I was downstairs watching something when I heard my name from the laundry room. The catch? My mum was working evenings, and it was Friday, pre-COVID, so my sister was at my friend's house, and I was alone with no one but my 2 cats, E and T, to keep me company. Needless to say, I turned the TV off and I bolted upstairs. The second event, this took place maybe a few months after the first event, only T had just recently escaped from the new house. We had no luck finding her, and I remember being upstairs in the living room when I heard T meowing from downstairs. The problem was that I knew that it wasn't just mistaking E's meowing for T's because E was in my mum's room. I went in to check. E was still in my mum's bed, and when I went back to the living room, the meowing had stopped. I didn't go downstairs to check because it was just really creepy. The third event, this one took place maybe a month ago, I think. We got our new kitten B in November of last year, and she's a rowdy little thing, getting into all the nooks and the crannies of everything. She also annoys E every chance that she has, and one day I was watching them just run around each other when E came flying past me from the basement and into the kitchen. I was heading downstairs to the freezer, I think, when I saw E at the bottom of the stairs. I just sort of stared for a moment before I backpedaled and searched for E, where I knew that I had just seen her rush past me and found her in my room. I rushed down the stairs, and the only one down there was B. I have no idea what happened that day. I don't know if I was just hallucinating or what, but it was creepy. Now, the fourth and the final event happened just recently. I was downstairs again when I heard meowing from the far upper left corner from where I was sitting of the basement. The only problem was that I knew that my cats were in the laundry room playing with each other, and even though I could hear them, I got up to check just in case. I decided that because my mother was home at this time, I had the ability to check out whatever was happening, because this time if something did happen, at the very least I could scream and be heard. But when I did, I found nothing but scratches in the concrete floor leading under this shelf thing that my mum has. Now, I don't know if a cat can scratch into concrete floor, but I don't think they can, so if you can, prove me wrong, but I don't know. Something weird is going on in this house, and I don't know what it is. Anyways, there's lots of bad vibes all around here, and I've been trying to keep away from the basement at night now, and any meowing that comes from the basement is pretty much ignored because I don't know what's going on down there, but it's definitely not my cats. The Pacific Northwest is really a place of wonder, and where we believe creatures of law exist. There have been too many various sightings here to ignore them. I wouldn't say demonic in nature either, more like tangible beings. The skies are vast, the air is clean, and there's sort of a mystic feeling here, almost as if when you turn a corner you might see a fairy or something. And quite frankly, we never really want to live anywhere else. Now, I've been renting a farm-style house with my 2 grandchildren, my son and his fiancée, for almost 3 years now. We have a well under the back half of the house and a pump house behind us. There's around maybe 10 acres of land looking out towards Mount Rainier, and we have a 2-car garage connected to a big workshop, and next to us is the forest. Now, all things that I'll be describing have been spread out since we've lived here on this property, but sometimes we hear screams coming from this forest, and all the wildlife becomes really still and quiet. Occasionally we've listened to what also sounds like a metal chair scraping on concrete floor in the distance that echoes just over the whole land. I've talked to the young man and his brother who currently live on the same lot but closer to the forest, and they told me that they've definitely heard it too, but they stay in after dark because it just feels like they're being watched. In fact, they all think that there's something just off with this land. His brother also shared that he sees what he describes as a demon boy in his room and other places in the house. On one occasion as well, I asked him why he calls him a demon, to which he replied, because he scares me and he messes with my stuff. I really don't think it's a demon, but what he saw and what we saw in our house will be for another time to tell. As for the noise in the forest, I have compared these sounds to various wildlife indigenous to the area, but I haven't found anything yet. But anyway, this is what happened when we first moved here on this property that is surrounded by farms. So one late night, I was driving down the lonely road home and lit only by a handful of streetlights when I saw a flash of eyes in the distance. And not wanting to hit what I thought might be a deer, I ended up slowing down a bit. When I arrived at where I thought it was gone, but the side of the headlights shined on something sort of greyish-white, and I noticed something almost the size of a man sort of crawling into the bushes. I saw its back muscles and shoulder blades and its back leg. There was definitely no fur and no tail and no feathers or anything. It was just sort of a light-coloured muscular creature. I quickly turned the corner though, hoping to see it crawl out over the train tracks on the other side of the bushes, but when I did, it wasn't there. So, in the end, I just chalked it up to some strange creature and I went home. But I know what I saw, and my headlights definitely shined on it. I'll try to compile all that we've seen in the last 3 years too, because that will add some context. So we know that there's something going on with this land, definitely. My 2 adult children, my son's fiancée, and I have seen a tall white creature a few times. It stands about 7 feet tall with large eyes, and you often see it peeking around the workshop, revealing its head, chest, shoulder, arm with its hand on the wall and part of its foot. Or it sort of peeks into the garage window, and we've seen this on many occasions. In fact, a few times from my son's window upstairs as well. My daughter was here for a visit once too, and she thought that she'd just dropped something earlier out back when she was playing with the kids in the yard. It was dark, so she and my son went out there, and they both had flashlights to find whatever it was that she had dropped. They were searching for a while when they heard something rustle in the tall grass beyond them. She shined her light in the direction of the noise, and standing tall there in the field was that same creature. And man, did they both run quickly back to the house. She later moved out of state, and it's been over a year since this happened, so before I wrote this, I gave her a call. I didn't want to lead the conversation too, so I simply asked her what she remembered, and she described that thing to a T. And went on by telling me about the time that she saw it on the roof of the garage where both awnings meet. Apparently, she stepped out onto the front porch and something caught her eye over the garage. She said that she stepped closer to sort of get a better look at it, and apparently it tilted its head. My daughter then turned to tell her brother to look, and when she looked back, it was just gone. Then, of course, she had to ask me, "Don't you remember me telling you about this, and you thought that I was on drugs or something?" I do remember that, and I actually apologized. And while I don't think that these things have any sort of ill intent, or at least I don't hope so, it's still a very scary thing to experience, let me tell you. On an early evening, my son and his fiancée were leaving the garage from the side door, and my son locked eyes with this same thing crouched on all fours on a lawn couch outside my bedroom window. He said that it was white with sort of pasty skin and had a long neck and big round eyes that almost glowed. Its head stayed fixed on him and straight, but moved up and around clockwise and back like it was sort of sizing them up like an owl would almost. It was crouched with knees, and it was not an owl, that's for sure. But my son then started pushing his girl faster to the house. It was a while before he went back out there, never alone and never at night again, but just to let you know, we have never seen a raccoon or even a squirrel on this property, so it definitely wasn't anything like that. Plus, this thing is much bigger than anything like that. Another time as well, I was on my front porch one evening. I let the dogs out one last time before bed and noticed that they were all acting sort of skittish. They all did their thing though, and then they piled up in the front of the front door with crazy eyes as if they wanted in now. Thinking that it might be coyotes, I just let them in and went to the end of the porch to see what frightened them. I actually keep a light on above my back door and another one further down on another area on the back of the house. And something was tall enough to block out the light, casting its shadow on the wall of the garage. It couldn't have been a giant moth or anything on the light too, because the shadow was cast by both lights. And that gave me the real creeps to think that something was standing right outside my back door like that. My granddaughter keeps her window blinds shut after dark, even though there's nobody around. She said that she feels uneasy, and we're not living in fear by any means, but it's just different, you know. This hasn't been an everyday occurrence or anything like that, but it's enough to take notice, for sure. I have no explanation as to what it is. At first, I even just blew it off, thinking that it was just some sort of wildlife that we didn't know about before, but after seeing these things for almost 3 years now and getting validation from others as well, I know that there is so much more to this. Maybe someday before we move, though, and if I ever get my hands on some proper camera equipment with night vision and whatnot, I'll try and capture something and I'll share my findings with you guys. Anyway, thanks for listening, and hopefully nothing bad happens. So about a year ago, I moved into a new apartment. It was my second year living alone. The city was relatively small, and I go to the local university there. One night, I was just bored at home and decided to set up a Tinder date. I was talking to this apparent normal guy, and he asked if he could come over to my place. At the time, I didn't see anything wrong with that, so I invited him and said that I lived alone. About 20 minutes after the message, he arrives at my apartment, wearing a black hoodie, big earphones, and he asked if there were security cameras in the hallways, which was weird. I said that there were a couple though, and from that I could feel that I may have just made a bad mistake. He got into my apartment though, and we made out for like 10 minutes in bed. Then he asked if he could try some of his kinks on me. At that moment, I wasn't thinking rationally anymore, and I said, sure. And he started biting my neck, my chest, and my legs, and then he started with some really weird stuff. He started pinching me really hard in the between me down there part, pulling my skin and just really digging his nails into my body. At this time, I was completely panicking and was asking him to stop, but he wouldn't. And then to top things off, he started choking me, and I couldn't get him off of me, because he was like this huge buff dude. At last, though, he stopped, and I rushed into the bathroom saying that I needed to pee. In no time as well, I grabbed a knife, locked myself in the bathroom, and called my other friends to come and help me. I got out and told him to get out of my apartment, or I would call the police. And to my surprise, he actually tried to attack me, but I had a knife in my hand and I started screaming. After hearing my doorbell, he quickly got dressed and he just rushed down the stairs. I guess the moral of this story is to please be careful when bringing strange people to your home. This scared me for life, and I never, ever will be going on another Tinder date again.